G'day running friends, welcome to the second training update for 2024. So I've completed my second week of training and I must say it went better than the first week, so definitely an improvement. I kept the structure the same as the first week, so 7 days of training, but this time I hit all 7 sessions instead of missing out one and only getting in 6. But what we need to remember is between weeks 1 of 7 days training, I took 2 days recovery and then I start the next 7. And those 2 days of recovery basically involve walking the dog. And one thing I didn't mention in last week's update is that I'm currently still on leave from work as part of long service and annual leave with the family holiday that we have and a few other things going on. So still got a little bit of luxury in a bit of spare time, making it easy to probably recover between the training sessions more so than usual. Probably a really good way to begin a brand new training program. Anyway, let's get into it. So if we line it up, we kept the structure of 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 60 minutes, then an hour 20, and finish up with 60 minutes, all running. And the basic premise is I kept it all comfortable, making the running feel fairly easy with the idea that I wouldn't slow down in the second half of the run. And if anything, maybe just a slight negative split. On the 60-minute run, the focus was keeping it nice and steady. And for those, what I did was I would focus on the hills. I would push it a little bit, keeping the technique, making sure I got some spring in my step, a little bit of height, so a bit exaggerated from normal running. But the idea, I wanted to make sure that I didn't slouch, didn't slump my hips, and that I was pushing through the full stride. So as a result, the heart rate creeps up a little bit. Whereas on the 90-minute and 120-minute runs, so the longer runs, I kept that pace comfortable. And on the steeper hills, I really backed it off, even walked some of the extra steep ones, but otherwise kept the cadence way down, made sure my technique was there, but didn't truly push it. So as a result, the longer runs, the heart rate was down a little bit, so averaging around 130 to 134, whereas on the 60-minute runs, the heart rate seems to average about 134 to 138. So not a massive difference in terms of averages, but there's a difference in range. So the longer runs, the range is compressed a little bit, whereas on the shorter runs, due to just going a little bit harder on the uphills, it's the higher heart rates were just that little bit higher. So hitting 150 and above, which is relatively high for me, which would be around my anaerobic threshold. So let's have a look at my training since this season started. So going into season 2024, started on the 13th with the 2 days jumping in. And if you'll see in the graph, purple line is what we call fatigue or the acute training load, kind of taken over a 7-day period, whereas fitness level is really the byproduct of the average load or the accumulated load over 42 days. And if we look at form, the idea is if we want to see improvement, we want it sitting in around the green zone, the optimal, and that little bump in the grey, that turned out to be the 2 days off. So it looks like, at least in theory, according to the training data, I'm on track for improving. And if we go into final search, we can look at the actual runs themselves. And I'm going to put up on the screen the first week and compare it to the second week. So the first week of training, it's a total of 6 runs. I hit 68.94 kilometres for that time with an hour and 51 minutes worth of running all up. In the second week of training, I hit 7 runs, so a run on every single day with a bigger total of 82.69 kilometres with a total of 8 hours, 57 minutes worth of running. So these runs felt pretty good. And in almost all those runs, I ran a little bit faster and a bit further for the same effort level within the same sort of time frames that I did in the first week. So definitely a fitness gain, as you would expect or hope for. Any negatives? Yeah, okay. I started getting some aches and pains, different than the first week. The first week were just some general muscle soreness, not quite used to the impact, but nothing lingering, just a bit stiff and sore after each of the runs. Whereas in the second week, what I found a little bit of pain in the tibialis posterior, so heading down into the ligaments going behind the ankle in both legs, more so on my left. That seemed to show up between the runs and waking up in the morning on a couple of days. So I was a little bit concerned that this might linger and continue on, but I did find over my last 3 days that just seemed to vanish. Maybe a byproduct that I kept in the prehab work. So I got in 2 days worth of the prehab exercises. So that's a mixture of relatively light, going through the motions, doing some tibialis anterior raises, some variation on calf raises, some split squats where I'm really extending the knee, so ATG style split squats, and a bit of core stability work. I'm also including 2 strength session full body work with, and that's about 3 sets for about 6 exercises, general full body, including like bench press, overhead press, squats or deadlifts, Nordic curls, and some bicep curls. And yes, it should help with my running, but the focus of that strength training isn't the running. That's in order to stay healthy and have a good active life as I go older. So it's an investment in my health, my mobility and strength as I get older. Being 46, turning 47 this year, I really got to start thinking about maintaining muscle strength, power and muscle mass. So training wise, I could say it's relatively boring, just going out, comfortable runs, nothing feeling overly hard, but that's the foundation. Success is boring. What it takes to do well at ultra running is essentially boring on paper, essentially boring to people who don't enjoy that type of work. So I love the act of running myself. I get out there and I really enjoy actually running. So right now I'm mixing it up on the paths that I choose, on the trails that I go. I've been out into Plenty Gorge on the trails and I absolutely love it in there. It feels so good. But I'm also enjoying getting out on my local streets, some of the flatter paths, and really the weather's been great. Maybe on the hot side being a Melbourne summer, so temperature's been hitting just into the 30s. But I feel good, I feel fit, I seem to be energized by the training, it's not draining me, and the trick from now will be to see if I can maintain this sort of workload, this basic week, while getting better, so faster for similar efforts, and gradually over the weeks increase the volume of some of the sessions, and then from there increase the intensity and speed that some of the other sessions are run at. So usually I'll be hitting 7 days of good solid training, 2 days recovery, and then repeating. But that's not always the case. Sometimes I'll have to vary it depending on other commitments and in particular my work roster. So for week 3, I'm only going to have 5 days before I get back into the 2 days off. And when I'm back in those 2 days off, that's when I'm back at work. So I'll be back into rotating shift work with early day shifts lasting 12.5 hours, going into evening shifts, night shifts, and then days off and rotating it around. So we'll see how my body handles that accumulated stress, whether the training needs to change, I'm yet to find out, but that's still a couple of weeks away. terms of races, well, I'm thinking I might be entering the Maroondah Dam 50K, which is hills. Was actually my first ultramarathon back in, I think, 2012. Course is almost the same, but it's hills. It's only up and down. There is no flat section. And I think that race is in March. And with a bit of luck, I don't think I have any other commitments that will take me away from that race. Then after that, what is starting to seem more likely and really developing a little bit of fire in the belly is the Trails Plus hardcore 100-mile ultra marathon in the Yuyangs. I think that may be my main focus. But at this stage, it doesn't matter. I'm in base training, and the training will just continue on and hopefully keep progressing. I hope that gives you a bit of insight into the basics of my base training, and we'll have a look at it next week to see how the 5 days fit together. But in the meantime, keep on running.